I counted 7 mistakes, 7 deadly sins D&D players keep making during character creation that always lead to the same place.
Damnation.
Sorry, I meant getting bored playing them and asking to reroll. In over 20 years playing D&D, I have created and DM'd for, well, a lot of characters, and what I found is that when a character isn't good enough, it's usually because it's either not sustainable to play, it was created without group dynamics in mind, or it's not mechanically balanced. The 7 sins I'm going to talk about today each fall into one of these categories. And you might think it sounds obvious, but people keep falling into these traps. So, let's fix it. We will take a classic example, the brooding rogue with a dark past, and fix each sin one by one. So if you stay until the end, we will have turned a walking cliché into one of the best characters your table has ever seen. Let's start with the first category, sustainability mistakes. Ever loved a character in a show until they slowly became a caricature? For me, it's characters like Jack Sparrow. What started as fresh and intriguing slowly devolved into a cartoon. He was unpredictable and clever until all that was left was slurred one-liners and exaggerated swagger. This all has to do with character sustainability, the difference between a character who can support ongoing stories and one who burns through their narrative potential in a couple sessions. And that brings us to the first sin. You've probably met this player. Their character has one personality trait, and they lean on it hard. I'm Grembar, and I never trust anyone. Every NPC interaction? Suspicion. Every party decision? Paranoia. And while it might be fun at first, after 6 months of the same reaction to everything, it starts to wear thin. Grembar might be rough around the edges, and maybe there's a heart of gold under there. But if he never grows or surprises anyone, the story around him stagnates. This is the one-dimensional character, and it suffers from 2 related problems. First, they're defined by a single personality trait that consumes their identity. Always angry, always sarcastic, or pathologically distrustful. And second, their quirks are constant rather than situational, which gets tiring quickly. What's entertaining for one session becomes exhausting by session 10. A little bit like living with someone who tells the same joke every day. It goes from funny to annoying to maddening. Here's the fix. Give your character at least 3 defining traits that can sometimes conflict with each other, and ensure quirks have specific triggers rather than constant presence. So let's start fixing our rogue, who is going to be called Theris, because, why not? So instead of making him perpetually untrusting of everyone, his suspicion emerges specifically around city guards and officials. I had too many run-ins with corrupt watchmen to trust the uniform. Yeah, he talks like that. Though cautious with strangers, Theris shows unexpected loyalty to those who earn his trust. After the cleric saved him in battle, he now ensures she always has an escape route during dangerous situations. And despite his street-smart cynicism, Theris has a hidden appreciation for elven music that occasionally reveals a softer side. When the bard played an ancient elven melody, the party noticed him listening intently, eyes closed. Elven music. This creates a character who feels consistent, but isn't predictable. Someone whose behavior shifts naturally with the situation. But let's talk about the second sin. So, your character already completed their revenge arc, reconciled with their estranged family, mastered their magical abilities, and discovered their true lineage before level 1? What? This is the backstory blunder. And it has 2 common forms. First, players create elaborate histories with no room for growth. effectively ending their character's story before the campaign begins. And second, they pile on so many disconnected tragedies and complications that the character is more chaotic mess than a coherent person. You see, complexity isn't depths. 5 traumatic events don't create a character 5 times as interesting as one with a single, well-developed formative experience. So, just focus on 1 or 2 of those, leave deliberate questions unanswered, and build in unreached goals that can only be resolved through play. So, for Theris, rather than giving him multiple tragedies, orphaned and enslaved and secretly royal, we focus on one defining event: his mentor's disappearance during a high-stakes heist. He taught me everything, then vanished when the job went wrong. Instead of knowing exactly what happened, Theris has only fragments. A strange coin left behind, and rumors of him being spotted in a distant city. The mystery remains open. Finally, his backstory creates campaign-relevant questions. Was his mentor captured? Did he betray Theris deliberately? These threads give the DM hooks to weave into the larger story at appropriate moments. This singular focus provides a clear emotional through line that can evolve as he grows. Okay, so that covers the first 2 sins, but we're not done fixing this rogue just yet. Now we'll look at the kinds of mistakes that don't just ruin your fun, they quietly sabotage the whole table. By the way, I put together a recap sheet of these points you can download for free by clicking the link in the description. And yeah, I might have added 2 bonus sins in there. So, imagine joining a soccer team. You show up, ready to play, and one teammate says, "I don't pass, I don't defend, and I'm only playing striker." Now, you're not just playing soccer, you're also managing that guy. That's our next category: social integration fails. The kind of mistakes that make your party quietly hope you fail all your death saves. And the classic example? My character works alone and doesn't trust the party. It's a common line, but it leads to character concepts that directly contradict the whole premise of a cooperative game. The classic mistake of creating a character with no reason to cooperate with others is perhaps the most persistent error in character creation. It prioritizes a narrow concept over the actual experience of play. So to avoid this, build at least 1 relationship motivation and 1 goal that explicitly requires allies. Back to our rogue. Here's how to make him work. Theris has a professional code. Information shared is a contract made. When the party told him about an upcoming heist, he considered himself bound to help. You trusted me with a plan. My skills are part of the bargain now. Though skilled at stealth and lockpicking, he knows his goals require the party's diverse abilities. And finally, he joined the party because he owes a life debt to the fighter who pulled him from a burning building. Until that debt is paid, I go where Vanya goes. Simple as that. These give the party a reason to stick together and keep the story moving. But sometimes the problem isn't isolation, it's overexposure. You've probably seen the type, the character who bursts into the tavern, demands attention, challenges the strongest patron to a duel, starts a performance, and tries to seduce the innkeeper, all before the party even sits down. Characters like this often drown out everyone else. And while each player deserves moments to shine, those who treat every scene as their personal stage can quickly sap the group's energy. So to avoid this, try to create moments where your character deliberately supports others' moments to shine. When Theris finds unusual mushrooms in an underdark tunnel, he collects samples for the druid instead of deciding himself if they're poisonous. Rena, these were growing near the entrance. Your expertise, not mine. Before confronting a bandit leader, Theris suggests a plan that features the paladin's strengths. I'll unlock the back entrance, but Tordik should lead the charge. And finally, when drinking in a tavern, he likes to raise a toast, acknowledging everyone's contributions to recent victories. These kinds of choices show that your character is a part of a team, not just a solo act with backup dancers. But collaboration isn't just about screen time, it's also about ethics. Picture a rogue who insists on stealing from the party while they sleep because that's what my character would do. When a character's moral code directly clashes with a party or the campaign stone, it creates constant friction, and eventually it drains everyone's patience. So please make sure your character's moral boundaries have flexibility and recognize group priorities. While Theris has no trouble stealing from the wealthy, he holds firm boundaries. I don't target those who can't afford the loss, and I never steal from allies. Some lines you just don't cross. When offered gold to provide information about the party's plans, Theris refuses outright. I may be a thief, but I understand the value of trust. Break that and you have nothing. And though his methods sometimes raise eyebrows, they ultimately serve the group's mission. When questioned about picking a lock to a restricted library, Theris explains, "We need that prophecy to stop the cult. Sometimes the rules need bending to serve the greater good." The point is, D&D is a collaborative game, so you need to make characters that are socially integrated and enhance the table experience. You do this by creating explicit reasons for cooperation that are baked into your character concept, designing support mechanisms that let you highlight other players' moments, and ensuring your character's moral framework is compatible with party cohesion. So, we've made our rogue more sustainable, more cooperative, but there's one last domain where things can go horribly wrong. The space where mechanics and narrative collide. So, the other day, I had to open up one of my daughter's toys because the battery ran out, okay? So I searched for a screwdriver, but who needs those, right? So I tried my luck with something else. Yeah. Been there before? That feeling of fighting against something that was supposed to be helping you? That's exactly how it feels to play a character whose mechanical abilities don't match their backstory and concept. And it brings us to our final category of character creation errors: mistakes in balancing power and narrative. Okay, I admit it's not the most common of those sins, but I promise I've seen it before from really roleplay focused players. My wizard has an 11 intelligence because he is self-taught and doesn't believe in book learning. What? They will then spend the next 15 levels failing at the one thing their class is designed to do. This is mechanical misalignment. Some players create concepts that sound interesting, but are frustratingly ineffective in gameplay. And the other side of the coin is more common, but I think that perhaps surprisingly, on a conceptual level, it's actually pretty close when players build for pure mechanical advantage with no narrative justification, creating a disconnect between the game's mechanical and narrative, storytelling layers. Both approaches lead to the same result: a character that feels weird and in the long run is unsatisfying to play. It's easy to fix. Just ensure basic competence in your character's core function while creating narrative justifications for mechanical choices. Theris has high dexterity, and as a rogue is proficient in stealth and thieves' tools. His charisma is decent too, not dumped, since a good rogue needs to talk his way out of trouble occasionally. Luck or guard, one way or another, I'm getting through, is something he'd say. His skill with short swords comes from street fighting in alley brawls, while his acrobatics training stems from years running across rooftops. Every proficiency stems from his urban background. At level 3 for his subclass, we will choose a thief. According to the player's handbook, they are a mix of burglar, treasure hunter, and explorer, and the epitome of an adventurer, which sounds perfect for our concept. Ineffectiveness isn't role-playing. It's just frustrating, while mechanics without narrative feel equally empty. You'll either get bored during combat, or don't know how to act in social encounters. And yeah, both suck. I'm not saying please min-max, or please never min-max. My point is, try to optimize for long-term fun. But even if your stats are rock solid, there's one final trap that can still wreck your experience. Writing a character who's so committed to their concept they refuse to grow. I've seen that next mistake very, very often. My character would never do that. It's a very common phrase some players use when refusing to engage with the story and events happening as a result of the other player's actions. Rigid character concepts that resist development based on game events create narrative dead ends and frustrate both players and DMs. To avoid this, simply build in adaptation mechanisms and growth triggers from the start. Going back to a rogue, we've thought about how Theris responds when things go wrong, with adaptation rather than stubbornness. When his lockpicking fails during a heist, he willingly follows the barbarian's suggestion to try the window instead. Plans change, survival depends on flexibility. We've identified potential character shifting moments. What if he discovers the value of law and order after helping protect the town from raiders? Never thought I'd be on this side of a town's defenses. Feels different. And we've planned evolution paths that maintain Theris' core while allowing him to grow. His self-reliance might evolve into leadership, or his risk-taking could mature into calculated strategy as he takes on more responsibility within the group. A character that evolves with the story doesn't just survive the campaign, they help define it. But isn't focusing on all of these aspects making character creation too complicated? Can't I just play what I want? I think it's worth it when you're thinking long term. Think of it as preventive medicine. A small investment in thoughtful design prevents major frustrations later. And yes, you absolutely can play what you want, but I think what you want should include a character I'll still enjoy after 20 sessions, and a character other players enjoy having in the party. Apply these principles and you will create characters with sustainable concepts, social integration, and balanced mechanics that remain enjoyable to play and to play with, session after session. But creating great characters is only half the equation. What happens when these well-crafted characters sit down at a table with a DM who's purely thinking like a rule enforcer? Click on this video next to discover why you should try to convince your DM to think more like a storyteller. Because great characters deserve equally great stories to shape.